All right. So we are now recording. I just want to thank you again for meeting with me for our Improve coaching session. All right. So today we're just going to talk about how the activity went that we did together the other week. And I'm going to ask you some questions. You'll just answer them. We'll have a conversation. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right. So, what do you think today is the most important thing for us to talk about?
I just want to kind of like run through the lesson and talk about high points, low points, and specifics, and just kind of do a summary and just talk about our general thoughts on it. So if leaving this, if I want to do it again or modify it, we just have our general thoughts about it. Just
Okay.
like a reflection and summary of it, how it went.
All right. I mean, I think that's a great idea because then we'll be able to, like you said, we'll be able to reflect on it, and then we'll see what worked, what didn't, and see if we can, make it even better.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's go ahead and review what you did. So what was it that you had done with your students?
So they did a Nearpod. They were in their groups on their laptops. They did a Nearpod that brought them to a Desmos activity, and they were able, it was a discovery focused task. So they were able to discover and explore the concepts and then eventually get to a more concrete procedural part of the task once they did their discovery. So there was that, and then there was also the learning map that they had where there was a big idea that I provided them, so they had some guidance in this discovery and kind of had a hint as to what they should academically be speaking about, because that was one of my things that I wanted to help them with. But then it had a bunch, or not a bunch, but other smaller ideas that they could fill in as they discovered it along the way, and there wasn't necessarily a correct word or phrase that was supposed to be filled in, but I mean, I had some in mind, but there was a couple different ways they could have perceived these smaller ideas and still had the right concept of it. So it was that, and then just talking about that, and then we did a whole class like summarization back together afterwards.
Okay. So do you think overall, do you think it went well?
Yeah, I do. Overall, I think it went well. I could get into the specifics, but I think it went well.
So what so seeing the strategy, were you able to like see progress towards the goal of decreasing um, time that students were not engaged and increasing academic conversation?
Yes. Yes. I think they were engaged with me in the normal amount of time, if not less than they were, and if with each other more, because they had to lean on each other to figure it out. And to figure out, they had to have academic conversations. So yes, it worked towards our goal.
Okay. So what surprised you about this activity?
I think how maybe easy it was for them to do this. I think sometimes our kids just don't know how to articulate their thoughts or like know what direction they're supposed to or not supposed to be going. So with a little bit of guidance, it was easy for them to articulate this. Like it wasn't that hard for them to get past the challenge and then figure it out. I think something else that surprised me was the variance in the group conversations, which is the beauty and the discovery, but it made it a little harder when we went to the whole class.
So you would say that would be also kind of a roadblock was the variance?
Yeah, and not because the concept itself, like you could interpret different ways. It was just like, I guess the line of thought in which the students perceived it was different.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was some variance that was hard for me as a teacher at the end to kind of like wrap up. And thankfully we were able to come back to it the following day with some concrete examples. Can you give me 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
Be right back.
Okay. So throughout this activity, what did you learn? What did you learn?
I think it kind of goes back to what I was surprised about, that like the kids are good at having these conversations and maybe their capabilities are more than I expected, which sounds bad. I just think they're good at having the conversations about the ideas and the concepts, but they might not be as good as like using the vocabulary and the correct like formal language about it. And that's where I come in as a teacher. Like it's my job to summarize and kind of make sure they know that all of their thoughts are about the same concept or vocab term. And I think sometimes like when I stand up there and teach it and they don't all understand it the way I'm saying it academically with the vocab and language and everything, I think, well, they must not understand or can't talk about it themselves, when really it just needs to be in their own world for a second before we make it really formal and mathematical.
Okay. All right. So I'm really liking where this conversation's going, because it's kind of, your answers are just kind of guiding right into the next questions I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk about possible improvements.
Okay.
So is this a strategy that you would keep using specifically just how it is, or would you make some changes?
No, I like how it is, but because I think it's going to take some repetitiveness and practice of it for the students to get used to this process, and the students to get used to the point where they feel comfortable enough where they know the next thing is not just me expecting them to communicate, but communicate with the correct vocabulary and language. Like I think it needs to happen a couple more times.
Yeah. So you would use this again. There's not really anything that you would significantly change.
No, just an emphasis on vocabulary and language, but that's
okay.
it.
So let's go back to your goal. Are you happy with the progress you made towards your goal with this activity?
Yes. Yes.
So we want to keep your goal and keep how we're measuring it?
Yeah.
All right. If you do decide you want to do some changes, we can always come back together.
Okay.
You know, you do it again and you're like, okay, well, this one didn't work out quite so well. We can always come back together. So how about this? Let's go into like next action plans. So you all should be starting a new unit soon.
Next week.
Next week. So how about, I'm assuming you're going to probably want to do this strategy again where they're exploring, looking for the concepts, going into the unit again.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we meet again at the end of next week after that to kind of see how the second time went?
Right. Okay.
So we'll create another discovery activity that caters to that unit, and see how it goes. And then we will talk about, did it go as well as this time? Are there any changes that need to be made? And make sure that we are still on track to your goal. I mean, it sounds like it went great.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's what we'll do. So next week after you do we will come together. Let's say me and you come together at the end of this week to create the discovery activity. Then
Yeah,
you'll
just
get
plan it all out.
And then the end of next week we'll come together and we'll talk about it again.
Okay.
Okay. So last question. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not committed, 5 being all in, how committed are you to acquiring your goal of decreasing the time that students are not engaged to less than 8%?
I would say about 4, 3.5, 4.
Okay.
Because
So
I don't know. I mean, like there's some days where that's not 100% true.
mhm.
But I think like the efforts are there and I'm seeing good products of it. And it needs to be something that's like a normalcy for me and worked into my classroom. But it's like I'm getting there and I can see it and believe in it happening.
Okay. That's good. I mean, I think a 4 is pretty good on being committed to a goal, and it's a great goal. So, all right. Well, fantastic. So yeah, so we will meet again at the end of this week. Let's say Thursday again.
Sure.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you again
Thank you.
for going through this with me and
Thanks for your help.
doing these sessions. I'm excited for us to keep working together.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me quickly stop the recording.
Woohoo!